You destroyed everything we had. Get out of here. That's what my daughter-in-law Lisa yelled, her voice piercing through the house, while my son Greg just stood there, not saying a word. My granddaughter Mia chucked a sandal at me, her face twisted with anger. My grandson Ethan just stared, his eyes wide but unblinking, taking it all in. Nobody stepped in to help me. Nobody tried to calm things down. I froze, waiting for someone to say it was a mistake, that we could fix this. But the silence was louder than their shouts, and I realized they wanted me gone. So I grabbed a single suitcase, stuffed in a few things, and stepped out into the chilly evening air. A month later, my phone kept vibrating like crazy. Over 60 missed calls. There was one text message. "Mom, please, it's about Ethan. He's gone." That's when it hit me. They weren't reaching out to say sorry. They were panicking because their big secret was about to unravel. I was folding laundry, lost in the quiet rhythm of the afternoon, when the house exploded with shouts, shattering the fragile peace I'd clung to. "You've torn our lives apart. You've ruined everything." That was Lisa, my son's wife, her voice sharp as a knife, shouting from the dining room. Then Mia, their 23-year-old daughter, my granddaughter, screamed over her, drowning her out. "You just had to go blabbing." And then Vanessa, Lisa's younger sister, who was sprawled on the couch like she owned the place, chimed in. "Well, Anna, got anything to say? Feeling good about yourself?" I walked into the hallway, still clutching one of Greg's old t-shirts, and saw them all lined up like they'd planned this ambush. Lisa was in her satin pajamas, her face flushed, gripping some documents I didn't recognize. Greg stood behind her, arms folded, lips sealed, as usual when things got messy. He didn't stand up for me. He never did. "What did I do wrong?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. Mia let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "Don't act clueless. You opened your mouth and now we're in deep trouble." I glanced at Greg, hoping for some hint of support. He just looked at the floor. Lisa took a step closer, her eyes blazing. "Everything we've worked for is gone. All because you couldn't keep quiet during a phone call." I was genuinely confused. I hadn't spilled any secrets to anyone. I didn't talk about their business. I barely left the house in Portland. I just kept my head down like they always wanted me to. "If you're going to yell at me, at least tell me what I did," I said, my voice softer than the storm raging inside me. Vanessa smirked, folding her arms. "Oh, now she wants us to spell it out for her. How cute." Lisa shoved the papers toward my face. "Do you even get what you told those people about Greg's work? People who report that kind of thing." My stomach churned. I remembered a call from the clinic about a week earlier on April 10th. The lady asked about our household income, and I mentioned Greg sometimes picked up odd jobs, even though he was on disability. I hadn't meant any harm, just casual chit-chat. I didn't know it would cause trouble. "No," Greg finally spoke, his voice cold, cutting me off. "You never think. That's always been your issue." I took a step back, my hands trembling slightly. Down the hall, Ethan, my 16-year-old grandson, Mia's younger brother, stood in the dim light, earbuds dangling, watching silently. Mia, in a burst of anger, tossed a sandal toward the wall, her frustration clear as it thudded nearby. "You've caused enough harm," she snapped. "Just leave." Lisa nodded like it was already settled. "You're not welcome in this house anymore." If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama. Stick around. This gets even wilder when their secrets start spilling out. I shuffled to my room, my steps slow, and nobody stopped me. I placed the t-shirt in my suitcase, packed only the essentials, a jacket, my wallet, my medications, and left the rest behind. As I zipped up the bag, I could hear them in the other room, talking, scheming, maybe even relieved. Vanessa muttered something like, "About time she's gone." I walked back through the hallway, past Ethan, who still didn't budge. I opened the front door, and the cold air hit me hard, but it didn't matter. I stepped out with one bag, no car, no plan, still unsure exactly what I'd broken. A month before, back in March 2025, the house had the same tense vibe, quiet, heavy, like a storm waiting to break. I'd wake up every morning around 5:30, not because anyone needed me, but because that's what I'd done for 38 years. I'd brew coffee, fold the clothes Lisa left in the dryer, and clean the kitchen counters before anyone else got up. Nobody asked me to do it, and nobody said thanks. That was just how things worked. Ethan would wander through the kitchen around 6:30, eyes glued to his phone, never glancing my way. Mia wouldn't show up before 11, usually grumbling about a migraine or some job she hated. Lisa would sweep in around noon, already scrolling her phone, sighing about how she wished the mornings could be peaceful. I did my best to fade into the background. That was the unspoken rule. Greg sometimes worked late shifts, sometimes didn't. I stopped asking about his schedule years ago. There were times he'd stay home for weeks, saying his back was acting up or there were issues with his paperwork. All I knew was that when money got tight, the air between him and Lisa grew thick with tension. I didn't ask questions. Asking made me the problem. My room was really just the spare room, crammed next to the washer and dryer. No windows, just a noisy vent that rattled at night. My stuff was packed in plastic totes since the closet was stuffed with Lisa's old jackets and Mia's extra boots. I had one tiny dresser drawer for myself. I didn't complain. I told myself I was lucky they let me stay in their Seattle home. That had to be enough. Vanessa started hanging around more back then. She didn't live with us, but she was there so often it felt like she did. She'd stroll in without knocking, help herself to the coffee I'd bought, and toss out little jabs like, "Still here, Anna?" Lisa never told her to stop. Greg barely noticed. Vanessa had a knack for making me feel like I was crashing in my own son's house. She'd rifle through bills on the counter or kick her feet up on the coffee table while binge-watching shows. Mia adored her. They were tighter than Lisa and Vanessa ever were. The house felt like a club I wasn't invited to. One morning, I was buttering toast when Vanessa sauntered in, wearing Lisa's bathrobe like it was hers. She poured a mug of coffee and leaned against the counter. "Hey, Anna," she said, her voice sugary but sharp. "You been chatting with anyone at the health clinic lately?" I looked up, caught off guard. "Just some lady about insurance stuff," I said. "Why do you ask?" She gave a lazy shrug. "Oh, just wondering. Those people always pry, don't they?" I nodded, not thinking much of it. The clinic lady asked about who lives in the house, our income, the usual stuff. Vanessa flashed a smile that was a little too big. "Hope you didn't say anything they could spin the wrong way," she said. "The government loves to play dirty." I scrunched my brows but brushed it off, not giving it much thought. I didn't dwell on it at the time. That day I went back to tidying up, folding dish towels, wiping down the counters, keeping myself out of everyone's way. But the way Vanessa's eyes lingered on me stuck in my mind, like she dropped a seed and was waiting for it to sprout trouble. It was a quiet Wednesday morning in early March 2025. Nothing pressing on the horizon. I was in the kitchen stacking napkins neatly when my phone buzzed with a call. It was one of those standard follow-ups from the health clinic. I'd been in for a checkup on my blood pressure and needed a prescription refill, nothing major. The woman on the line was friendly, clearly reading off a script, confirming if my Seattle address was still correct. She asked who else lived in the house and if anyone brought in money. I answered straight up, not overthinking it. "My son Greg owns the place," I told her. "He's on disability, but he picks up small cash gigs now and then to help with bills." That was the honest truth. I didn't say it to cause problems. I didn't think it was some big secret. I figured everyone stretched the truth a bit to make ends meet. I didn't realize saying that on a recorded call could trigger an investigation. Nobody ever told me those conversations weren't private. The lady didn't react much, just gave a quick aha, and moved on to her next question. The call took maybe 12 minutes tops. I hung up, grabbed a sponge and started scrubbing the counter again. I didn't even notice Vanessa perched at the kitchen island until she piped up. "Those clinic folks sure dig into weird stuff, huh?" I glanced over. She was sipping coffee, smirking like she'd been waiting for my attention. "Didn't see you there," I said, a little startled. "Didn't need to be noticed," she shot back, then added. "Hope you didn't spill anything too juicy." I frowned, confused. "Just the basics, who's in the house, what we do. Nothing odd." She raised her eyebrows and said, "You know the government gets real picky about income, don't you?" Then she slid off the stool, still grinning, and sauntered off. My stomach twisted, but I pushed the feeling aside and went on with my day, not thinking twice. That evening Greg got home late, barely glancing my way. Lisa didn't say a word to me, which wasn't unusual. Mia was out somewhere, and Ethan was holed up in his room. The house felt heavier, like a storm was brewing. The next morning, a fat white envelope showed up in the mail addressed to Greg. He ripped it open at the dining table, scanned the first page, then slid it under a stack of bills without a peep. Lisa shot me a cold, hard look. "Did you say anything on that clinic call?" she asked out of nowhere. I blinked, caught off guard. "What call?" "Your doctor's office or whatever. They asked about the house income, right?" "I just told them the truth," I said. "What truth?" Her voice got sharper like a blade. "That Greg does some side gigs sometimes, just small stuff. Why's that a problem?" Lisa stared at me, her expression turning to stone. "You know he's not supposed to report extra income while on disability, don't you?" My throat went dry like I'd swallowed sand. "I didn't mean to mess anything up," I stammered. "I was just answering their questions." Vanessa's voice cut in from the hallway. "Well, look at that. The secret's out now, isn't it?" I stood there, frozen, my heart sinking. Greg stayed quiet, just flipping the envelope shut like it was no big deal. I didn't fully grasp what I'd done wrong, not yet. All I knew was something had changed in the air. For the first time in weeks, nobody scattered when I walked into a room. They stayed, glaring, waiting like they wanted me to feel their anger. Within 2 days, the whole vibe in the house flipped upside down. I woke up the next morning to Lisa's voice echoing through the hall, sharp and furious as she paced, talking on the phone. I don't care what's in the paperwork. We were never told about this. Now everything's on hold. How's that even fair? I stayed in my little room by the laundry machines like I'd learned to do over the years, keep quiet, stay out of sight. But her words still seeped through the walls. Yes, he's on disability. No, I don't know why this is happening. No, I don't know who tipped them off. The call ended with a click and a dial tone. I waited a full hour before creeping out to the kitchen. The TV was off, and the air felt thick like something big had gone down overnight. Greg was at the table, still in his sleep shirt, staring at a messy pile of mail. Lisa spun around the second I stepped in, her eyes red and puffy. "You said too much, Anna," she said, her voice low and cutting. I opened my mouth to respond, but she barreled on. "You told them about Greg's side gigs. That's what screwed us. They flagged it and now everything's frozen. His disability checks, our benefits, the rent assistance, all of it." Greg still hadn't looked at me, his face blank. "I didn't know," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone." "You think it matters what you meant when the money's gone?" Lisa snapped. "You fed info to a system that doesn't give a damn, and now they're poking around." I looked at Greg, desperate for him to say something. He just let out a slow breath, eyes fixed on the table. "You should have been smarter," he muttered. That was it. I backed out of the room, my legs wobbly, my head spinning with every word from that call, replaying over and over. Had I really said work? What exactly had I told them? I couldn't pin it down. I stayed in my room the rest of the day, not eating, just sitting there, trying to piece it together. The next morning, Vanessa showed up earlier than usual, waltzing in without knocking like always. She strutted into the kitchen and announced, loud enough for everyone to hear, Well, looks like our resident tattletale stirred up a government mess." Mia, hunched over a bowl of cereal at the counter, snickered without looking up from her phone. "She's just a burden, Mom. Seriously, why do we even keep her around?" Lisa mumbled something under her breath, then added, "She's lucky we gave her a corner to sleep in." I lingered a moment, then stepped out like everything was fine, pretending I hadn't heard. Nobody glanced my way. I shuffled past them to grab a glass of water, feeling their eyes dodge me on purpose, like I was invisible, a shadow they refused to acknowledge. Vanessa sipped her coffee, tilting her head with a smirk. "Maybe your memory's slipping, Anna. Old minds get fuzzy, you know. Can't always tell what's secret and what's not." Mia snickered, scrolling on her phone. "We should get her one of those nanny cams, catch what else she spills." My hands trembled as I filled my glass, but I kept quiet. I realized this wasn't just anger or a mix-up. This was a calculated move, a punishment. They weren't just upset, they were setting me up to be cast out. And not one of them, not even my own son, was going to stop it. 4 days after that envelope arrived, after Greg's icy silence and Lisa's biting words, I knew the rift was permanent. I kept hoping someone would cool off, maybe see I hadn't meant any harm, but things only got uglier. The house became a theater, and I was the prop they all danced around, ignoring. I caught Vanessa on her phone, speaker on, telling someone, "Anna's losing it, turning into a real issue." She dropped her voice, but loud enough for me to hear. "And she's not even chipping in for bills." That evening, Lisa and Vanessa declared they were hosting a girls' night at the house, something they hadn't done in ages. I holed up in my room, thinking they'd keep it chill. I was so wrong. The music stayed soft, but their laughter was loud, sharp, the kind meant to cut through walls. I heard wine glasses clinking, heels clicking on the hardwood, and my name, Anna, tossed around like a punchline. I tried to block it out until Mia's voice rang out. "Hold up, let me do her." Mia mocked me, imitating my voice, saying I'd spilled family details to the clinic. Their laughter stung, sharp and unrelenting. Vanessa chimed in. "Don't skip the part where she goes, 'I didn't know it was wrong.'" More howls. Lisa cackled. "That's too perfect." I sat on my bed, paralyzed, staring at the door, half expecting them to barge in. It felt like I was back in school, cornered by bullies. Except now I was an older woman, and these were my own family. My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms, leaving little crescent marks. Then came the worst blow. Mia, giggling, said, "Why don't we just kick her out already? How long are we gonna act like she's not dead weight?" Vanessa jumped in. "Let's make her leave on her own. Plant the idea. Let her pack her own bags. No guilt for us. Lisa let out a chilly laugh. Oh, sweetheart, those seeds are already sprouting. I didn't cry or fight back. I sat frozen, their cruel laughter echoing like a blade, carving away the last piece of my place in their world. I felt like I was shrinking, fading into nothing in the same Seattle house I'd helped pay for back when Greg was 24, broke, and begging me for support. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me crushed enough to walk away myself. The next morning, nobody mentioned their little party. Not a peep. They sipped coffee with fake smiles. Mia wore her sunglasses at the breakfast table, hiding her eyes. Vanessa was already glued to her phone when I came out for tea. It was all an act, and I finally saw the truth. This wasn't about that clinic call. That was just their excuse. They'd wanted me out for ages, just waiting for the perfect moment to pin it on me. If you're gripped by this drama, please like and subscribe for more real stories like mine. The night I left wasn't some big loud scene. No shouting, no smashed dishes, no one pleading for me to stay. It was worse, quiet, calculated, like everyone in that house had silently agreed I didn't belong. And they were just waiting for me to catch up. Lisa cooked pork chops that evening, and nobody offered me a bite. Mia brushed past me like I was furniture. Vanessa lounged at the dining table, sipping rose, chuckling at her phone, her feet propped on the chair I usually used. Nobody spoke to me, nobody even looked at me. The message was crystal clear. You're not wanted here anymore. I ate a couple of crackers and a slice of apple in my room. Lights off, TV muted, just for some noise that wasn't their voices. Around 8:30, I slipped out to rinse my mug in the sink. Greg was slouched on the couch, arms crossed, glaring at the TV like it had wronged him. Greg, I said softly. He didn't budge. Greg, can we talk for a minute? I tried again. Nothing. Lisa appeared from the hallway, folding a towel, and spotted me. Still hanging around? She said, her voice flat, like my presence was a mild irritation. Vanessa let out a soft laugh. Mia clomped downstairs in her fuzzy slippers, saw me, and wrinkled her nose like I was a bad smell. Don't just stand there, she mumbled. That was it, the moment everything clicked. Not because it was the harshest thing said to me that week, but because it stripped away the last shred of pretense. They weren't hiding their contempt anymore. I turned, walked back to my room, and shut the door without a sound. I packed slowly, methodically. I didn't have much. Just a few outfits, my old photo album, my medications, and a small stash of emergency cash tucked inside a folded scarf. I folded everything carefully, checked the drawers 3 times, and left the spare key on the nightstand. I didn't write a note. They didn't deserve one. I zipped my suitcase, my hands steady now, not from calm but from a deep, quiet ache, a loss too big for tears. I opened the front door. The cold Seattle air hit me as I stepped outside, my bag slung over my shoulder. Ethan, my 16-year-old grandson, stood in the hallway, the only one who hadn't turned on me. He was holding a soda can, his earbuds loose around his neck. I'm going, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't say a word, didn't ask where or why, just gave a small nod, like he'd seen this coming. I walked past him, the hallway light buzzing faintly. Mia's door was cracked open, laughter spilling out from her phone. Greg never looked up from the TV. Lisa stayed out of sight. Vanessa didn't even glance my way. I stepped into the night, the door clicking shut behind me. The Seattle night air was damp and biting as I stepped outside. I had no car, no destination, no real plan, just a bag and my resolve. I didn't slam the door or call out a farewell. I didn't think I'd ever return. The place I ended up in was nothing fancy. A tiny studio tucked behind a hair salon, with walls so thin I could hear every word from next door, and a lock that jammed every time I turned the key. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was calm. I paid the first month's rent in cash on April 15, 2025, and kept my name off the lease. The landlord didn't pry. The only furniture was a rickety metal bed frame, a wobbly nightstand with a sticky drawer, and a scratched-up dresser that tilted like it was tired of standing upright. I unpacked carefully, tucking my clothes into the bottom drawer, and sliding my photo album under the mattress. I stuck a little note above the sink. Keep breathing. You're free now. At first, I wasn't afraid, just exhausted. I heated up instant oatmeal every morning, watched old sitcom reruns with the volume barely audible, and listened to the neighbors bicker about grocery lists and parking spots. It was odd how peace felt loud when you hadn't felt it in so long. For the first week, my phone stayed quiet. And I was relieved. No messages, no calls, no fake niceties from Lisa or guilt trips from Greg. I told myself this was what I needed, to vanish, to finally breathe. But silence can turn heavy when it drags on too long. By the end of the third week, I caught myself checking my phone too often, opening my contacts, lingering over Ethan's name, then shutting it down. I never texted him. I didn't want to pull him into my mess. He'd stayed out of the drama, or so I thought. The first missed call came on a Saturday morning. I was stirring sugar into my tea when the screen flashed, Greg. I stared, let it ring out, and flipped the phone face down. 10 minutes later, Lisa called, then Mia, one after another. I ignored them all. An hour later, an unknown number popped up, followed by 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to them, not yet. That night, I powered off the phone and shoved it under a dish towel. By the next morning, it was chaos. 12 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and 3 texts from Greg. The first read, "We need to talk. It's about Ethan." The second was just one word. "Please." That word stopped me in my tracks. I sank onto the edge of the bed, phone in my hands, my heart pounding like a drum. Something was wrong, and they weren't calling to make amends, they needed me for something. If you're hooked on this story, please hit like and subscribe for more real-life drama. I forced myself to play one voicemail. It was Mia's voice, but not the sharp, mocking tone I knew. It was wobbly, desperate. "Grandma, please, Ethan's gone. He's missing. We don't know where he is. Call us if you hear anything, okay?" My whole body froze. I played it 4 times. Missing. Gone. My mind raced, picturing every dark alley, every corner of Seattle he might be lost in. I hadn't reached out to him, hadn't checked on him since I left. I turned the phone off again, not out of anger, but because I couldn't catch my breath. Every unanswered call felt like a tug back to that house, but I wasn't ready to face their panic or their lies. In 6 weeks, they hadn't cared if I was okay. Now they were blowing up my phone, and all I could think was, Ethan was always the quiet one, the observer, the one who didn't lash out. If he was gone, something or someone had driven him to it. And I had a sinking feeling I knew what. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I lay on the squeaky mattress, phone face down on the nightstand, staring at a ceiling stain shaped like a lopsided star. Every noise outside made me flinch. Footsteps, a car door, someone yelling about a late delivery. And each time, I pictured Ethan, my chest tightening until I could barely breathe. By dawn, I couldn't stand it anymore. I turned the phone on, and notifications poured in. 20 missed calls, 5 voicemails, and a string of texts, all saying the same thing. "He's missing. He left a note. We don't know where he is. Please call." I didn't trust them, not after everything, but I couldn't ignore Ethan. I called his school. The receptionist patched me through to a counselor, Ms. Harper, who recognized me from a family night a couple of years back. She hesitated when I asked if she knew anything about Ethan. Then she said carefully, "He's been struggling at home lately. He told me he wished he could stay with you." I went still. "Did something happen?" I pressed. Her voice dropped. "About a week ago, he had a blowout with his sister. He said Mia called him spineless for sticking up for you. Then told him to go live with his perfect grandma, if he cared so much." The words hit like a slap. Anger burned up my throat. "Did he stop showing up at school?" "No," she said quickly. "He came the next day, but he was withdrawn. I told him my door was always open if he needed to talk. That was the last time we really spoke." I hung up, sitting cross-legged on the bed, hands balled in my lap. They'd lied to me. All those frantic voicemails, all that fake panic. They made it sound like Ethan just vanished. But the truth was they pushed him out, emotionally, maybe even literally. They made him feel unwanted, then tried to dump the blame on me. Like I was the one who'd left him behind. My phone buzzed again. "Lisa." I let it ring. Then Vanessa declined. Then Greg. I picked up that one. "Hello," I said, my voice steady but icy. There was a pause. "Mom," Greg said, his voice breaking, and for a split second, I heard the scared kid who used to call me from payphones when his car died. "What happened?" I asked, calm but sharp. "He's gone," Greg said. "We're trying everything to find him. The police told us they'd file a report if Ethan doesn't show up by tonight. We have no idea where he is," Greg said, his voice heavy. "He didn't take his phone." I stayed quiet, letting the silence stretch between us. "We thought maybe he went to you," he added hesitantly. "Why would he do that?" I asked, my tone even. Another pause hung in the air. "Because you're the only one he still talks about like he trusts," Greg said. Those words hit me hard, sinking deep. I didn't respond. I didn't tell him what the school counselor had shared, how Mia had shoved Ethan out, or how I could already picture Vanessa muttering that he was too soft, too loyal to an old woman they'd written off long ago. All I said was, "If I hear from him, I'll let you know." Then I ended the call. I sat on the edge of my bed, gripping the mattress, my heart racing. This wasn't some random disappearance or a kid running off. This was what happens when a boy sees his family's true colors, and they punish him for it. If Ethan showed up at my door, one thing was clear. I wasn't sending him back to that house. If you're gripped by this drama, please like and subscribe for more real stories like mine. Just after 1 p.m. the next day, April 17, 2025, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. No voicemail, just a single ring that cut off fast. I stared at the screen, then hit redial, bracing for a telemarketer or dead air. A young male voice answered, tentative. Hello. This is Anna, I said carefully. I'm looking for Ethan. A pause, then a sharp exhale. Yeah, hold on a sec. I heard shuffling, a door squeaking, and then his voice came through. Grandma, Ethan said, his voice faint and wobbly, like he hadn't spoken all day. Ethan, I gasped, relief flooding me. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm safe, he said quickly. I'm at my friend Jordan's place. He let me stay over. I didn't know where else to go. And I didn't want to go to school today. They'd just call home. My legs buckled, and I sank onto the bed. Are you hurt? Do you need anything? No, he said, his voice steadying. Can I come stay with you? That question broke something open inside me. Of course, sweetheart. Right now, anytime. He went quiet for a moment, then said, They lied, didn't they? They made it sound like I just took off, but they pushed me out. I didn't need to hear the details to know the truth, but I wanted him to say it, to let it out. What did they do to you? I asked gently. Mia called me a traitor, he said, his voice tight, holding back tears. She said I was pathetic for sticking up for you. Told me to go live with you if I cared so much. Then she flung my door open and tossed my stuff into the hall. Lisa didn't say a word. Vanessa just laughed. Greg told me to drop it. Said I was being overdramatic. I shut my eyes, my hands shaking with anger. You didn't do anything wrong, I said softly. They just couldn't handle you seeing them for who they are. He went silent again, then whispered. I didn't want you to leave. My throat tightened, words failing me. I know, honey, I said. You don't have to explain. Can you come to me? Yeah, he said. Jordan's place is a few blocks away. I'll text you the address. I'm on my way, I said without hesitation. Before leaving, I called the police non-emergency line, letting them know Ethan was safe with me, and I'd handle notifying his parents later. He sent the address as soon as we hung up. I grabbed my jacket, slung my bag over my shoulder, and left my studio without a second glance. The bus ride felt endless, every stop testing my patience, every sound, a car horn, a shouting pedestrian, making me check my phone to ensure he hadn't backed out. When I reached the address, Ethan was sitting on the front stoop, his hoodie up, a backpack at his feet. He stood when he saw me, and for a moment I thought he might break down. But he didn't. He wrapped his arms around me, not a quick hug but a deep, clinging one, like I was the only person who'd ever made him feel safe. I hugged him back just as fiercely. We didn't talk much on the way back to my place. He kept his hood up, eyes down, earbuds in, and I didn't push him. When we stepped into my tiny apartment, he looked around, taking in the small, quiet space, and murmured, This already feels better. I brewed him some tea and let him sit in peace. He didn't mention the others, didn't say their names. He unpacked slowly, folding his clothes neatly, setting his phone face down on the nightstand like he wanted to forget it existed. That night he slept soundly. No footsteps, no yelling, just calm. For the first time since I left that house, I didn't feel so alone. 3 days later, a loud knock jolted me, sharp, impatient, like someone wasn't taking no for an answer. I knew it was them before I peeked through the peephole. Lisa stood there in a navy coat, looking like she was playing a role she didn't quite fit. Greg was beside her, staring at his sneakers like a kid caught in trouble. I didn't open the door right away. I let them knock twice more, then cracked it open and leaned against the frame. We just want to talk, Lisa said quickly, her eyes darting past me, scanning for Ethan. This isn't about fighting, Greg added, still avoiding my gaze. I stayed silent, then opened the door wider and stepped aside. They marched in like they owned my studio, heading straight for the tiny kitchen table like it was a boardroom. Lisa crossed her arms and flashed a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We're here because we're concerned, she started. About Ethan, about how this whole thing looks. I raised an eyebrow. Looks to who exactly? She faltered. The school, the neighbors, social services. He's 16. People are starting to ask questions. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. And who decided to throw his stuff into the hallway and tell him to get out? Greg squirmed in his chair, his voice low. Ethan was acting out, calling us out in front of everyone, saying we were cruel. Sounds like he was just being honest, I said, keeping my tone steady. He was scared, and you didn't like him speaking up. Lisa sat up, her posture stiffening. You've got no idea what it's like juggling 2 kids, scraping by on bills, dealing with a sister who's always around, and a mother-in-law you've wanted gone since the start, I said, finishing her thought. Let's not kid ourselves. This isn't about Ethan's safety. It's about covering your tracks. Her lips twitched, but she didn't argue back. Greg finally met my eyes. Is he all right? He asked. He's not answering our calls. He's safe, I said firmly. And no, he doesn't want to go back. He made that crystal clear. Lisa let out a sharp scoff. He's just a kid. He doesn't get to call all the shots. He's 16, I countered. Old enough to see when he's being played. Old enough to know who's there for him when things fall apart. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. What, you think you can just keep him? You're living in a closet. Better a tiny space filled with calm than a house dripping with venom. I shot back. The silence that followed was heavy, like the air before a storm. They glanced at each other, then back at me. So what's your plan? Greg asked. You're just gonna keep him just like that? I didn't waver. Yes, unless he tells me he wants something else. Lisa's voice sharpened. You don't have custody. You don't have any legal claim. We came here trying to keep this friendly. I walked to the door and pulled it open. If you were really about keeping things friendly, you wouldn't have waited until your lies started falling apart to show up. Ethan's not your scapegoat or your fix-it guy. He's a kid you hurt because he cared about someone you decided was worthless. Neither of them budged at first. If he wants to talk, he'll reach out, I said. Until then, stay away. They got up slowly. Lisa shot me a look like she wanted to fire back, but for once she held her tongue. Greg gave a single nod, then trailed her out. I locked the door behind them. Ethan stepped out of the bathroom a few minutes later, toothbrush in hand. He didn't ask who'd come by. He just looked at me and said, "Did you set them straight?" I told them what they needed to hear, I replied. He nodded, then went back to brushing his teeth. That night, we whipped up peanut butter sandwiches and watched a cheesy game show with the sound off. We didn't laugh much, but the quiet wrapped around us like a shield, ours to cherish in a way that house never allowed. For the first time, I felt like I was writing my own story, not just surviving in someone else's. The next morning, April 20th, 2025, I booked a slot at the local legal aid office, stuffed my documents into an old shopping bag, and walked there while Ethan stayed home, working on his assignments at my cramped kitchen counter. I sat in a hard plastic chair for nearly 90 minutes waiting. When they called my name, I met Ms. Carter, a no-nonsense woman in her late 40s who asked pointed questions I'd never dared answer out loud before. Has he been neglected, hurt, or denied school or basic needs? I laid it all out, measured and truthful, no embellishment. How Ethan had been emotionally targeted, kicked out. How I had texts and voicemails to prove it. How his school counselor confirmed he felt unsafe. I showed her the call logs and Mia's social media post from the night I left, captioned, "Finally got rid of the dead weight." Miss Stewart's expression stayed neutral, but her pen moved faster as she jotted notes. "You're not his legal guardian," she said. "But with this evidence, we can push for emergency temporary custody." My heart skipped. "Will it work?" "It's up to the judge," she said, tapping the printed messages. "But you've got a strong case." I left with a stack of forms in my bag, and a lightness in my step I hadn't felt in months. Back home, Ethan was right where I'd left him, earbuds in, a half-eaten apple beside him. He looked up, flashing a small smile, just enough. I told him about the legal steps, and he nodded, like he'd known I'd fight for him. "You don't have to take them on," he said. "I'm not going back." "I'm not fighting for them," I said. "I'm fighting so no one can take you from a place where you're safe." The next week dragged. I scrubbed the apartment until it shone, cooked enough food for a small army. Ethan slept better, cracked more jokes, sat closer on the couch, didn't jump when the neighbor's door slammed. One evening, he showed me a sketch he'd done for art class. Pencil on paper, a cozy apartment with light streaming through a window, 2 chairs at a table. It was our place, clear as day. I didn't tear up, but I tucked the drawing under my pillow for safekeeping. If you enjoyed this journey, please like and subscribe to more stories. The hearing wasn't like the movies, no big speeches, no gavel smashing. Just a judge, a couple of lawyers, and a stack of evidence. Greg didn't show. Lisa did, but she barely said a word. Her lawyer tried to argue I'd coerced Ethan, but the judge reviewed the texts, voicemails, and the counselor's letter. He reviewed the evidence, asked Ethan a few questions about his wishes, then looked at Lisa, who had no counterargument. After a brief pause, he signed the order. Temporary custody granted. I walked out of that Seattle courthouse holding Ethan's hand like he was 6 again, not 16. We didn't talk on the bus ride home. Words weren't necessary. Back at the apartment, I made mac and cheese with real butter, none of that powdered stuff. We ate on the floor, still without a proper table. But it didn't matter. That night, I knew no one could take him from me. No one could silence us anymore. The family that once used shame and control to keep me small had lost the one person who truly saw me for who I am. This wasn't about getting even, it was about breaking a toxic cycle. And I was determined to make sure it ended with me. It's been 3 months since the court granted me temporary custody on April 20th, 2025. Not a single soul from that house has shown up at my door since. No calls, no texts, no Vanessa, no Mia. No Lisa with crocodile tears, not even Greg. At first, I braced for a counterattack, some legal maneuver to drag Ethan back, but the silence held. Then it clicked, they didn't lose Ethan by chance. They discarded him the moment he stopped playing their game, stopped being their perfect compliant buffer. Now he's with me, not as a possession, but as someone who chose to stand by my side when everyone else told him to walk away. Our little Seattle studio is still cramped, still budget, still noisy from the hair salon below. But now we've got Ethan's sketches pinned to the walls, shopping lists stuck to the fridge, and a second chair at our tiny table. I whip up pancakes in the morning, and he actually eats them. He does his homework sprawled on the couch while I knit, flip through a book, or fuss over the plastic fern by the window I keep forgetting isn't real. We chuckle sometimes, not all the time but enough to feel the warmth of a safe space. Just last week, Ethan asked if I'd ever go back to that old house. Not to stay, just to talk. I gave it to him straight. I didn't walk out just because they pushed me away, I said. I left because I finally saw they'd never stop trying to make me feel like I didn't count. He didn't say much, just nodded and slid me the last slice of bacon. I'm not foolish. I know the future's uncertain. Temporary custody isn't forever. But right now, Ethan's here choosing this life with me, and I'll fight tooth and nail to protect that. If you like this story, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what impressed you the most about this story. Also, we recommend you to listen to our previous story. It is even more shocking. Just click on the box on the left to play it. Thank you for watching.